What's going on, everybody? See, we got a few questions already in here, so that's awesome. I appreciate you all hanging out today and joining this last-minute prospect hot stove Q&A. I wanted to make sure we get one in after we bailed on the last one. I was not able to get going on that live before we did the full case break for eBay and Joe DiMaggio's Children's Hospital, which went awesome, by the way. Thank you to those, any of you that are in here right now. We're part of that break. It was pretty electric. We pulled a Bazana auto out of 150. We pulled another Bazana auto. There were some really crazy case hits as well, like some stuff in the product I had no idea about. So that was a lot of fun. Keep an eye out. We'll be doing more breaks and stuff in the future, and it's a blast. I've really enjoyed doing it. The sorting on the back end, not as fun, but the actual stuff of like ripping the cards and talking to you all, it's a blast. So I'll start with a banger of a question right here from Mr. Juan. And I always appreciate you being in here, Mr. Juan. So I'm going to work on a first year player draft article soon, and we'll probably do an episode on that sooner rather than later on the call up. But this is a tough question because I don't want to be too reactive to small samples and pro debuts, guys. Generally, like there's not a ton you want to take from that, but there's some things that you can see right out of the gate and you're like, ooh, okay, that's something that maybe I didn't totally expect. I think for the positive side of things, it can be beneficial. For the negative side, I don't want to be too harsh on that front. And I'm saying that kind of leading into Charlie Condon, right? Because I don't want to, fully knock him for a slow pro debut. But the problem with Condon is I had some concerns about the swing path and the mechanics as an amateur. And then it felt like those kind of got exacerbated and exposed to a degree. It's a floor ceiling conversation as well, right? Like I think if you are in a rebuild mode and you really need an impact player and you want to swing for the fences, I think going with a Caglione it is the play potentially there. But I also think if you're keen on, okay, I need a player that I just want a player that's going to be able to contribute to my team and get there relatively quickly, there's almost no chance you're going to get burned on Bazana. And I think Bazana's stolen base aspect of his game is going to only ramp up as he gets more opportunity and gets closer to the big leagues, because that's going to be another way that he separates himself. You got to remember, like, yeah, he's going to hit for average, but is he going to be Luis Arias? Probably not. He's going to get on base at a good clip, but I don't think pitchers are going to work around him and walk him at a 20% clip like they did in college. Defense is going to be fine at second base. So another way that he can kind of separate himself, I think, is those stolen bases. So from a fantasy perspective, I like him. But I think the best player, the best prospect of this list would be Noah Schultz, right? And Noah Schultz is a guy that's going to get up to the big leagues this coming season. He has frontline potential. I think in terms of solidifying himself as one of the best prospects in baseball, like not a lot of guys did more to, I think, solidify their already lofty expectations than Noah Schultz did last year. He exceeded the perceived innings limit that they were going to put on him as well. They still ended up pushing him a little bit past that, the White Sox did. So if I'm taking one player here, just all things are equal, right? I'm starting from scratch. I'm taking Noah Schultz. But if I need offense, I'm probably playing it safe with Bazana. If I need a superstar potential bat, I'd rather go the Cags route than Condon. I just think the bat's a ball is better. The approach is a concern, but I would rather deal with that than some swing mechanics and approach. So that's probably how I would go about that. But it's a really interesting one. I think Schultz is the best prospect, though. And proximity-wise, no reason to believe that any of these guys would get there before him anyways as well. So it just seems to make it a lot of sense that way. Brendan Montgomery depends on the Red Sox. I think coming off of injury, they may want to ease him in. So I could see a very brief stay at low A and then a quick send to high A. Wouldn't be surprised if they start him in high A either. I think it's going to depend on how he responds in spring training, how he looks off the injury. I'm not too worried about it, but maybe there's a little bit more rust. If there's some rust, I expect him to probably start in low A, but I'd imagine he gets, pushed to high A relatively quickly if he does not start there. Great question. I do really believe this is the year that DePaula taps into the power. And I think it's important to remember with Dakota, like this is a big kid, right? He's like 6'4", 6'3", 6'4", still wiry. Like, but I think it's not even really about the physical strength though, right? Like the EVs are strong, but I think he's being 19 years old, and really he's 19 still now. He's going to be 19 on opening day. So really age 18 season, he's playing in low A and high A. I always liken, usually this was like left-handed pitchers, but I liken big, long levered teenagers to baby drafts, right? Like you're still learning how to maneuver your levers and really maximize your mechanics to do the things that you want to do. Josue Dakota still was managing his levers and being such a big framed kid quite well. And I think that would be evidenced by his 130 WRC plus and decent contact rate, above average, pretty much close to plus contact rates in low A and high A in his age 18 season. Extremely impressive. Obviously only 10 home runs in 107 games. You want to see more than that. But I think for him, the focus was, let me have a good approach. Let me put bat on ball. I'll try to hit the ball hard consistently. He did that. And I think now it's okay. I know who I am as a hitter. Like I know how I want to move in the box. I've got my swing in my lower half down for the most part now. Now what do I need to do to reach closer to that ceiling and get towards that, okay, I'm on a fast track to the big leagues. And I think it's going to be that elevation side of things, which will come with just the way that you attack the baseball, the approach as well, which is already, he's very selective. Now it's just kind of seeing how can I get into my power more consistently? How can I elevate more consistently? That's going to be via pitch selection, but also I think just knowing that he can let it eat a little bit more. A lot of the swings that I saw him take were just comfortable. It almost seemed like a B swing, even when he didn't have to, just to spray line drives all over. Like he really looked like he wanted to establish that bat to ball and comfort. And then I think the focus now this year is going to be, how do I let it eat a little bit more? The EVs have been there. There's room for more. I think he's going to find that. And it's not like this guy's putting the ball in the ground at like a 55% clip. It was a 45% clip last year. So I think it's more just about picking his spots a little bit better and just consistently elevating. And I think he can easily do that. Dodgers will probably come, honestly, the end of the offseason. I tread lightly on updating the systems of teams that are generally active and not afraid to subtract from those systems. So Dodgers are coming, but I think we'll probably do a few other teams before that. But yeah, with Dakota, still one of my favorite prospects in the game in the outfield. And as he gets more comfortable with, again, I think there's a focus on long levers, let me be short to the ball and all that good stuff. Swing could flatten out at times. I think he's going to find a way to backspin baseballs more consistently. Dakota Jordan's fun, man. I like where they got him at for the upside perspective of things, right? Like it was a good chance to take. Farm system's not the best. Like let's shoot for the stars a little bit. But there's a lot of concern there bat to ball wise. Like I think it was one of the more questionable hit tools of anybody drafted in the first 5 rounds, if not the most questionable hit tool. And I'd like to see the speed translate into more value, right? Like he's not the best defender in the world, and he's playing in a corner despite the plus run times. He didn't really steal a ton either. He's a project. And you know what? I'm fine taking a project when I don't have a ton in the bonus pool and the farm system's not great. Like I'm fine with that if I'm the Giants, but I think he's become a buzzy name because of the tools and because there was a chance that he was going to be a first rounder if he posted better contact rates. It's pretty unprecedented for a guy to have the contact rates that he had in college than to succeed in his first year professionally. I think it's going to be a slow burn, and I think there's going to need to be a lot of patience there. What's up, Chris? I always enjoy our interactions. Being a huge Rays fan, I ask you to make a wild move we don't see coming. It's been too quiet for Tampa. Oh, let me pull up the roster resource here, baby. Like, because I mean, from a pitching perspective, they look pretty good. Like I wouldn't do too much of that rotation. McClanahan, Taj Bradley, you got Shane Baz, Ryan Pepio looked really solid last year. Zach Littell had a nice season. Drew Rasmussen can always be brought back into the rotation. I mean, they've got arms, man, and I'm not really worried about that at all. Ian Seymour was fantastic last year. They've got options. Yaniel Correa is not too far away, already on the 40. But you look at the lineup, and I mean, Taylor Walls is glaring, but you got Carson Williams not too far away. You hope that you can kind of bring him up sooner rather than later, but I'm sure they're going to want him to play a little bit in AAA. Also, one of my favorite interviews we had in a while on the call-up. Check out that Carson Williams conversation. He's the man. Easy to understand how he has been able to put things together and continue to progress. A Brandon Lowe trade would not shock me, but again, it has to make sense. Why would you want to subtract from the offense when you're kind of trying to bolster it? I think that's kind of the deficiency here. So you say they've been too quiet. When I look at this team, I feel like I'm almost forcing a move if I'm going to make one. And it doesn't seem like they'd want to subtract from the farm unless there's something obviously there. So I'll circle back because I got to think about that. When they have assets, like I know Curtis Mead, he's been banged up, didn't play great, but like that's a player the teams would still have plenty of interest in. I think there's several other players that teams would have plenty of interest in that they could move. So I'll circle back on that one, but it feels like they're in a weird spot right now where I don't know if I would force a trade, and I don't know how much is out there for them to be able to actually add to the team. Because I think if anything, they should be adding. It shouldn't be moving a Yandy Diaz. I don't think it should be moving some of these guys. They got to try to bolster this offense. Jules, always have some good stuff from you. Hye-Seong Paredes' advanced metrics are a horror show. Forget the spray chart. Sorry, I know you love spray charts. Everybody should love spray charts. Screams Rays fleece. Stroh's lost 1.3 WAR. Okay. It is the exact situation he just had in Tampa, though. Like, you're putting him in a spot where his spray charts are going to be catered to success, right, for him. He has unbelievably good bat-to-ball skills. They don't shine through as much in the average department because he's selling out for pull side lift. But when you are that adept to being able to manipulate the barrel and also the approach is that elite as well, he's going to get to it, to the pull side. He's going to do it. So is he going to replicate some of the numbers in Tampa? I don't know, but there could not have been a better landing spot. If he went back to Detroit, I agree. If he went to a lot of other places, I agree. If he's in Seattle, yeah, it's not going to look great. We kind of saw it at Wrigley. This dude in Houston is going to put up numbers, Jules. I'll make a friendly wager with you on that one. I think good chance he hits 25 plus. And I mean, in that situation there, that's all they really need. It's going to be hard to piece together all of the war that they lost between, Bregman and Kyle Tucker. But I think if you were trying to do it, like, which they were, obviously, they did it as well as possible. I gotta be honest, Jules, you love to doomsday the Astros. We always go back and forth about it. And I get it's frustrating when you don't get to retain a Tucker or Bregman. But if you were going to try to maneuver this thing and make it as salvageable as possible, I think, and I've been critical of Dana Brown at points, but like, added the top prospect in their system who's going to be up sooner rather than later in Cam Smith. Added a guy that's going to hit 25 home runs this year. I really think so. Added Christian Walker, who I know is older, but still is going to mash theirs. And another guy that I think will very much benefit from the environment and is going to play a superb first base for you. Cleared up some money to be able to address some other areas, which they already did at first base. Added another depth arm in Hayden Wesneski. And all of a sudden, like, the farm system's not great, but they've got some arms that are getting closer and I think can actually contribute for them. And that rotation is legit. I think they're still in a great spot. And you can look at the advanced metrics because the EVs are so low. But again, this is an exception to the rule. There's exceptions to the rules. And I think Paredes is one of them in the right situation. Oof. We got a lot of dynasty drafts this weekend. Can you guys tell me, is it too late for us to put out a first-year player draft article? I realize I should have done that. Just been swamped. But are most of the drafts this week? When are most people's drafts? Because I would try to get one out maybe by early next week. Let me know. But I don't want to be too late and put the time in and then doesn't help anybody and then makes everybody, if anything, just second guess your picks. If I put a guy higher than you ended up taking him or vice versa. Fourth pick though. I mean, you got to assume Condon is off the board. I'd assume, I'm trying to think how these first year player drafts go. Because it's kind of a mixed bag right now. Give me a scenario of like a few players that you think will be on the board for you based on the people in your league, and I'll kind of tell you how I would go about it. Why do teams not want prospects? Seems like there's really only two teams who truly want prospects. Yeah, well, this is the interesting conversation around the expanded playoffs, but I also think it's a payroll thing as well, where a lot of teams are not totally interested in tearing it down, but they're going to make big leaguer for big leaguer trades. I don't necessarily think this is a bad thing. I know it stinks for you, Alex, and Mariners fans, because Mariners have a good farm system again. All of a sudden, they're in a spot where, they could address some needs. They're not going to spend because their owner's cheap. And okay, they could trade from the farm. And we've seen Jerry Dipoto willing to do so. But a lot of teams don't really want just prospect hauls, because a lot of teams feel like they're in the hunt-ish. And I think it's a double-edged sword here, though, too, because teams are also more reluctant to give up their top prospects than ever before as well. So you can say, why do teams not want prospects? But also, are the Mariners willing to trade Colt Emerson? Probably not. Teams want maybe blue chip prospects. If not, hey, there's expanded playoffs. Like, instead of the Flyers or guys that are further off, I think we can piece this thing together and hover around and hang in, in the playoff race. So I think that's part of it. And I think it's the other part of it is that teams are trying to piece together packages of prospects outside of their top couple. And then you have these stalemates. And that's why it took so long for Garrett Crochet to get traded. And it took an organization with arguably baseball's best farm system to pull it off. And they didn't trade from their top three prospects, right? Roman Anthony didn't go. Christian Campbell didn't go. Marcelo Meyer didn't go. So I think that's really the challenge in this whole thing as well. It's an interesting stalemate, but I do think it's better for baseball when you have more big leaguer for big leaguer trades. I think we got too far the other way at points where it was too clear cut and it was just dumps for prospects, and you almost never saw a big leaguer for big leaguer trade. So that part is, I think that's a better illustration of baseball being in a decent spot, is that you don't have teams just stockpiling prospects and dumping players and being farm systems for the rest of the league as much. Just the Marlins and the White Sox, who are in their own realm in that regard, and for obvious reasons. On that point, the Mariners want to address needs through Luis Castillo. A realistic return is tough because so many teams are a little payroll apprehensive, right? And that's another reason why you see teams not wanting to take on just trade prospects and vice versa. Like, I think a lot of teams want to exchange money if they're going to do it. Castillo has become underrated. And our friends in the Marine Layer podcast talked about this. Like, I know it wasn't his best year ever last year, but Luis Castillo is damn good. And with the cost of pitching, him at $24 million a year for the next 3 years with a vesting option in 28 at $25 million, like, it's not a bad deal at all. But just teams are not in a position to want to take on money right now. And he's been, for whatever reason, has been a guy that's just been assumed like an injury liability, as if every pitcher isn't. Yet he has been pretty durable, knock on wood. So it depends. I think there's a lot of big leaguer for big leaguer trades out there for him. I don't understand why the Orioles wouldn't do something around like Mountcastle and some really solid prospects. But, I think he's still a guy that needs to command a top 100 prospect and a couple fillers. But I just don't think teams want to take on that kind of money. I think it's more the years than the AAV side of things, right? Like, do I want to pay a 34-year-old Luis Castillo? Potentially not. You don't know how it's all going to go. But you also, like, he comes with injury protection because that vesting option doesn't vest if he misses 130 plus days in 2025 through 2027 due to UCL injury. So I assume that was something in the physical, whatever it may have been, but you have some protection in that deal. So that's the side of it that I think makes it interesting. If I'm the Mariners, though, like, why would you subtract from a strength and a superb strength, maybe the ultimate strength, to hedge a weakness when you have a good farm and you could just spend a little money? But that's ownership, unfortunately. Who in the Giants system do you actually like? I mean, Bryce Eldridge, of course. I mean, he has special offensive talent. Building on that, I think James Tibbs is a good piece. I still have hope for Rainer Arias. Like, it's just been really unfortunate, all the injuries that he has had. But I still think that's a guy that can be a really dynamic player. Frederick Crawford can never stay healthy. I believe he's going to be a good high leverage arm. Johnny Level is fun. Like, I think Johnny Level is just going to hit, man. Like, that guy can just hit. He makes it look easy. He's got a rocket for an arm. Can probably stick on the left side of the infield. I think Johnny Level is a fun prospect as well. But it starts to drop off pretty quickly from there. Trent Harris is a fun arm. We talked about him as like a candidate to potentially make the leap up to the big league sooner rather than later if the Giants need somebody. But it's not a great farm at all. I would say so. So Hye-Seong Kim, I was a little bit cooler on him through doing my research on the international guys and and that whole process this offseason. I think the floor is relatively high in the respect that he's a good defender at second base. He can get by at shortstop. He can get by at third. He's a great base runner. He's going to steal plenty of bags. And that's helpful. Makes a lot of contact. I really think that the Dodgers envision him as a bench piece this year and then hope that by 2026 he can develop into that, if he's a league average hitter at second base with his speed and defense, like, that seems to be the archetype that's becoming very popular, right? These glove first speedster second basemen that just accumulate WAR. I mean, the fact that the Jays were even willing to take on Andres Gimenez's contract says a lot. But I don't know if the ceiling is very high because the EVs are low. I think it's 5 to 8 home runs, maybe, we can grow into 10, but makes a lot of contact. He's going to run and steal bags. I think on the low end, he's a 1 WAR guy. On the high end, through defense and stolen base accumulation, he can be that like 3.5 win player. But that's probably the ceiling. If you were the Twins, given the pitchability arms in the system, would you consider moving Joe Ryan or Bailey Ober for a bat? The tough part is, like, Joe Ryan, when healthy, looks like he can be, like that guy for you, right? Like, he can be that guy. Bailey Ober is high floor and solid, but I think, when you look at Ryan in his situation, still pre-arb somehow. This is a guy that, or I guess he would enter his first year of ARB this coming season. When he is right, he can be dominant. Ober, like, he'll have some of those surprise outings here and there. I love Bailey Ober, by the way. Don't get me wrong. But Zebby Matthews might be able to do some similar things as he settles in. I don't think that's totally impossible. I would consider moving Ober. But now with Baltimore just signing Charlie Morton, I don't think – how many more number 4 starters do they need? It's outrageous. Joe Ryan could be that shoot for the stars a little bit more for them, but I just don't see them making that trade. I think with Bailey Ober, I'm trying to see the contract situation for him because, remember, everything's going to be financially motivated for the Twins at this point, unfortunately. And it's probably a matter of who's going to get more expensive more quickly. That will definitely be a factor in this thing, but they're kind of projected to make almost the same exact amount of money. So, I would rather hold on to Joe Ryan and move Bailey Ober, as solid as Ober is. But I think there's a lot of teams that would be very interested in a Bailey Ober, and you can get a haul for him. Only Oda projected 3.7 this year and then 2 more years of control after that. could definitely get a haul for him. It's just why, like this is a team that probably needs to be a little pitching centric with the volatility in that lineup. And I wouldn't do it with how cheap he is. And if you have payroll constraints, I wouldn't move one of the two starters who's going to make less than $4 million this year. I just don't know if I see it. I can't put my doctor hat on right now, but I think clearly there were some issues health-wise with Cade Horton, and that's why we didn't really see him back at the end of the year or anything like that. I think in a perfect world, the answer would be yes. With velo ticking down and him only throwing 34 innings last year, I don't know if that is something that you can bank on. I think at the end of the second half of the season, if he's healthy and he's throwing well, there's no reason to waste bullets in the minor leagues. And I mean, he can, if he's healthy and looks like Cade Horton, he's going to grab a rotation spot from, potentially Javier Assad, as solid as he was last year. Some of these other guys, Assad probably moves into a long relief, spot starter role. So I'll say he joins the rotation at some point this year, but it's entirely health dependent. And I don't know how he's doing health wise. I don't know totally how he's feeling. I see this question, Drew. I will get back to it because I want to think about that a little bit. See, next question. A lot of really good questions. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out here again. Really appreciate it. Oh, one of our guys here, Michael Monreal. Check out his work on justbaseball.com. Pretty good website. I know you're right for the Giants first. Come on, man. What do you expect from the young guys this year? Fitz, I think, stood on his head a little bit, but I do think in the right role, crush lefties, know that he's going to whiff, but playing second base, I think that's a good spot for him. I love Casey Schmidt as like a super utility type that can play shortstop, elite third, elite, potentially really good second base. He gets more comfortable there. I think he's great in that regard. And the bat is slowly come along. I think Schmidt is still incredibly underrated. Hayden Birdsong found something, man. That kick change. I think he could put up better numbers over the full season than Kyle Harrison potentially. But I've always been a little bit of a Kyle Harrison skeptic. So, I mean, and that was one where Giants fans got on me for our rankings of Kyle Harrison. But again, I think I always said I thought he was going to be a solid number 4 starter, and hasn't quite been that yet. I think he can be, but I think Birdsong has a little bit more going for him and has an arsenal that can allow him to turn lineups over a little bit more consistently. I think he's going to have a nice year. McRae, he's got to show that he can hit enough to shake that 4th outfielder outlook, but man, can he fly? And man, is he a good defender that I think gives him such a solid floor. The swing and miss obviously is going to be a challenge for him. And I don't have a prediction on Elliot Ramos because that was the biggest surprise. There's surprises every season. Elliot Ramos's season last year was the biggest surprise for me. And I know that he was once, highly regarded and he was a top 100 prospect for us in 2021, but like I had fully shifted my focus elsewhere. I did not see this coming. And just have it click for him. And obviously he did it for a long enough sample where you can say it's validated. I'm just really excited to see how he follows that up in his second season here, and see how it looks. But I couldn't give you a prediction because, man, like I did not see that coming at all. With Rocker, Leiter, Langford, and Carter all out of the farm now, where does the Rangers farm fall? Are there any names to look out for in the system? Yeah, this was a system that was really fun for me to dive into because, some of them I'm not as consistently keeping up with the players, just the way it shakes out, maybe as much as some other organizations, not for any reason, just the way things time up with trips and what I'm watching, what I'm keeping up with, or just what's on my radar. And when we updated the Rangers top prospect list for just baseball, it was one of the more fun dives for me because there were so many prospects, and we updated it in October. So I would go check that out. Like it's one of the more recent updates for us. Obviously, Sebastian Walcott is a top 25 prospect in Major League Baseball. Obviously, Kumar Rocker is a top 30 prospects in Major League Baseball, and I think should get a look in the rotation this coming year. But it gave me an opportunity to dig into Alejandro Rosario, and he's become one of my favorite pitching prospects in the game. Not saying he's one of the best in the game, but he's not far off. I mean, he's a guy that was borderline top 50 prospect in the game. He had a 7 ERA at the University of Miami. I think it was a 7.11 ERA to be exact. And the Rangers draft him in the 5th round. He had some day one intrigue out of high school, though. They take him in the 5th round and say, hey, we want to experiment with we want to adjust some things. They tinker with his release. They have him throw his splitter a little bit more. And all of a sudden, his fastball's getting crazy ride. He's filling up the zone way more. His splitter, which was always good, now he's using more consistently and landing more consistently. His slider looks gross. And I'm like, this guy might have 3+ pitches here. The command looks above average. There were ABs where like he could go with whatever pitch he wanted, and he was going to make hitters look silly. It's 96 to 98 from a 5.5 release height, and he's getting like above average vert from there too. I think this guy's going to be a monster. So I think he is the name to watch. Then the pitching, by the way, Chris Young has done an unbelievable job overhauling the pitching development and identification in the system. Even guys that they already had before he got there, they have clearly found something here. Each of them have tweaked their sliders and unlocked something, and then found something from a consistency standpoint, I think, with their fastballs. Jose Corneo was out for the season, but Tommy John will be available, I think, at some point this year. Really like what he brings to the table, too. Former Mariners farmhand. He really broke out in 2023. They added him to the 40-man roster, and then he got hurt in spring training. Fastball has good characteristics, has the patented Rangers gyro disgusting slider, and he flashed an above average changeup as well. Then you got Emiliano Teodo, who's going to plug into that bullpen potentially, throws over 100. Then you've got Winston Santos, who is trending towards like a non-prospect, repeats low A, but then he finds that patented Ranger slider and starts getting 17.5 inches of vert on the fastball from a below average release height, and he dominates last year. Like, there are arms in this system to like, and I really like where the Rangers are at. Yes, we can talk about this. I don't know who to blame exactly. I don't know if it's the new ownership, which I would have thought that they were going to help them spend more. I don't know if it's the most hesitant front office guy in baseball and Mike Elias. It is ridiculous how apprehensive the Orioles have been over the last 2 years. You have a 90+ win team. You have a young core that is controllable, but won't be controllable forever, right? Like, you're going to be hard pressed to extend Gunnar Henderson. You're going to be hard pressed to extend Adley Rutschman. This is your shot. Young, controllable core. And these are the moves you make. Tomoyuki Sugano, Charlie Morton. I like the Eflin trade if they were going to go do something else. Corbin Burns was like that. That's what we've been waiting for. And then he's gone. I just don't understand it. Trevor Rogers, like, I don't hate it if you went out and got a more impactful arm. Why are we stockpiling 4 and 5 starters and then just praying that Grayson Rodriguez not only stays healthy, but makes a leap to being a number 2 guy? Like, I just don't understand it. Why couldn't you go get a Sean Manaea? Because there's a pick attached to it? Who cares? Now's the time. Why can't you go get some of these other guys? I don't get it. I don't get it. And I feel like Mike Elias has been terrified of failure. And I don't know why the front office has been so hesitant to make impactful moves. Brennan Lowe to the Mariners. Yeah, I don't think it would take much more than that. Brennan Lowe to the Mariners. He's second base is a sneaky deep position all of a sudden, which makes it even more ridiculous that the Mariners have struggled to address it. But I think Ford is very expendable for the Mariners at this point. I think Gina Martinez's value is tanked, though, a tad after struggling to throw strikes. But Lowe is, not the cheapest deal. I mean, it's not a bad deal by any stretch, but he's not under minimum control, right? It's 10 and a half and then 11 and a half, which again is a good deal, but it's not the minimum or pre-arb or whatever it may be. So I think that would probably get it done with his injury concerns. And I just wonder if that makes sense for them raised, given I think Dominic Keegan is a better catching prospect than Harry Ford at this point. And then you're taking a flyer on a couple arms. So I think they're a good partner, but I think it would be a different type of trade potentially, but who knows? The Rays may just stockpile talent and athletes and be fine with that. And that they like to just get athletes. So that wouldn't shock me. A little bit more on the Orioles real quick. I mean, you got to trade Mountcastle. I know that that's not going to move the needle for you, but you can attach Mountcastle to prospects. We were just talking about, why do teams not want prospects? Well, here's a way. Give them a big leaguer, and then add some prospects to make it worthwhile. They need to, because I think it's silly to have Kobe Mayo blocked in AAA. I understand it looked bad, but this team, this offense is so good that you can weather the storm and have Kobe Mayo progress for a couple months. When is he ever going to develop? You have to. And now you need to slug, because this team, look, they're not going to be pitching centric. The bullpen could be pretty good, but they're not going to be pitching centric. You need upside. And you know what you're getting with Ryan Mountcastle at this point. There's a chance that in the second half of the season, Kobe Mayo can be on that 30 home run pace and be a masher for you. So I would rather clear the way for Mayo, trade a Mountcastle and prospects, and see if you can also address another spot, or just dump Mountcastle. I don't totally understand it, especially when you already have Ryan O'Hearn as well, who I think has consistently been a solid hitter for you. And then you can also, Samuel Basayo's getting a lot of reps at first base. They've got guys there. I'd rather roll the dice a little bit on the upside there, knowing that you have so many other dudes that can plug in. You can always plug in Heston Kjerstad if it's not working out at first base too. There's so many options. I'd rather go about it that way. River Ryan is going to be good, though, when he comes back. It's just crazy. Unfortunate circumstances. Lorenzo, I would miss. We had him ranked ahead of Cartaya for a good reason for a while. But now I think it became the consensus pretty quickly. Let's see. Next question. Good question. I don't know if I see that much power, because he is still kind of a flat swinger. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. He made, and that was one of my favorite pieces I put out in a while, was that swing breakdown that allowed him to, the adjustments that he made that allowed him to hit the ball in the air a little bit more, hit the ball harder, and just find the barrel more consistently. But I think he's a guy that's going to be really hitting hard line drives, all fields, and be a 20 to 25 home run guy. And then a lot of doubles and things like that. But wouldn't shock me if he pushed to 30, but I think he's more 20, 25. It's just his spray angles and things like that. But again, wouldn't shock me as he fully matures. Because they don't actually develop. They just throw them into the big leagues. I also don't think that they have the infrastructure. This is something that comes from the president of baseball operations, but it also comes from the ownership, right? President of baseball operations has to buy into development. Then the owner has to buy into it, in which case you need the resources, both from a personnel perspective. You need scouts, you need hitting coordinators, you need people traveling around and working with your players, you need equipment, you need technology, you need all of these things. And it requires an investment and a buy-in from the owner. And then it also requires it to be important to your president of baseball operations. So I think it's a combination of that and the fact that they're just entirely unwilling to develop. It's let's get you up to the big leagues. I have no patience. Artie Moreno is exactly what his generation makes fun of like Gen Z for, right? Like, oh, they need instant gratification. I don't think there's anything more clear of an example of someone who needs instant gratification than Artie Moreno drafting a guy from FAU saying, I need him in the show tomorrow. It's not how baseball works. It's never been how it works. It's comical, really. I mean, Artie Moreno is an embarrassment when it comes to ownership, and I don't like just saying such harsh things, but he just doesn't. I can't believe that he still wants to own the team. Like, why? What's the point? Sal Stewart and Cam Collier appear to be on similar timelines, but they're both still similar or primarily playing third base. What kind of defensive alignment? Stewart, I think, could play some second, but he is probably more that traditional third baseman. I think Collier could end up sliding over to first. He's done a decent job of maintaining the footwork, and despite kind of getting thicker with the lower half and everything, he still has remained somewhat agile. But I think if they're both playing the corners, I think Collier would play first, Stewart would play third. But I also think Stewart could play some second base as well. And speaking of dives that I've done, the diving into Cam Collier swing adjustments was fun too. And he found something the second half last year and thought it looked really good. Everyone's been saying that, the Hye-Seong Kim signing means that Gavin Lux gets traded. Would it shock me? No. But I don't necessarily know if that's for sure the case. Again, Hye-Seong Kim, he needs a little time, I think, to get acclimated and everything. So I don't know if that necessarily immediately means. I think if anything, it might mean that Miguel Rojas could, get cast aside. That said, I would rather keep Rojas because you needed a backup shortstop. But they've also got Alex Freeland right there too, who I think is close to big league ready, if not big league ready. So it's interesting, but I don't know if it's for sure, but I could see it. I could definitely see it. Todd, thank you so much for the support. You're the man. Should I buy or sell Brailer Guerrero propaganda? I like Brailer, man. We had him in the top 100 before he went down. And this kid, he is a monster for a teenager. And he was already popping EVs north of 110. I really like the swing mechanically at this stage. He's way more athletic than you'd expect for a kid that's as big as he is. Look, he's far off and a lot of things can happen. But that swing in terms of the mechanics and the raw power and the body, I think he could be an absolute monster offensively. He's far off. We'll have to see. But I think you should buy the propaganda. I didn't know there was. I thought I was the only one spreading the propaganda. I'm glad to hear others are. Johnny, I'm glad you love some steel balls. My favorite team growing up was the Marlins. Ironically, I grew up, man, going to not that ballpark. By the way, my girlfriend painted that. Incredible artist. Check out Ellie Huffman Art. She does some cool baseball stuff too. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. Look at that. That Michael Harris painting is unreal. I want to get her to start doing more of those player canvases stuff, but that one is awesome. She's really good. Grew up going to the Marlins games with my dad. That's where the love of baseball came. And the Marlins, I don't have much attachment to them anymore. But I do root for them now because my best friend plays for them, and now I got another friend on the team. And I do want to see baseball thrive in South Florida for the fans and everything like that. And I got my start covering the Marlins because that was an easy market to start into. There wasn't a lot of competition there, but also that was the team I knew the best, and that was the first show I ever hosted. And so there's always this special place in my heart there because there's so many Marlins fans that still have a core on Twitter that I love to interact with, and the ones that are left. And it's always been special to me. But the team that I really fell in love with the game, 03, I honestly barely remember when they won the World Series. I was 6 years old. But then 2005 was that 03 team. They had Carlos Delgado to the fold, and I fell in love with that squad. Thought they would make it. they got banged up, didn't, and it was like shocking. I mean, you had Miguel Cabrera, Carlos Delgado, Josh Beckett, Dontrell Willis, Alex Gonzalez at short, Luis Castillo, Juan Pierre, Juan Encarnacion. That team was good, but just didn't quite come together. Paulo Duca, AJ Burnett, that team was good. But then the team that really, really my peak of my fandom and where I really fell in love with it was the 2008, 2009 Marlins, where they tore it down, broke my heart a little bit after that. But I'll take it 2006, just before they tore it down. They tore it down partially, but they kept Miguel Cabrera. They get Hanley Ramirez, Dan Ugla, Cody Ross. And I'm like, this team is fun, man. Josh Johnson emerges. And then they trade Dontrell and they trade Miguel Cabrera and break my heart. But they kept hitting on these prospects, right? And that's really what started to get me into the prospects. Because then they end up adding, not even prospects, signings too. Jorge Cantu hit 30 home runs. They trade for Mike Jacobs. He hits 30 home runs that year. They had that first infield that hit 25 home runs across the board. Hanley Ramirez was a 7-WAR player. I'm having the time of my life watching these teams. And if they had the expanded playoffs back then, the Marlins would have made the playoffs in 2009. Without a doubt, I think they won 89 games. There was a lot of fun there, and I'd go to that old ballpark and that old football stadium, and with my dad, nobody was there and had the time of my life. So that's where I fell in love with it. But then they tore it down a bunch more times, and you start to get a little jaded. Look, it seems to be very commonplace to just say, and again, I just told you, I don't have a emotional attachment. I couldn't have been more harsh on the Jeter era. I think that was one of the bigger embarrassments ever. And that comes after a pretty big embarrassment in the David Sampson, Jeffrey Loria era, where there was a hilarious comedy of moves all the time. They put the GM before they fired him as manager and said, we're going to fire you unless you just go be the manager. Then he was the manager for the rest of the year, and then they fired him. It was legit clown show. But for whatever reason, it's just become automatic to say, hey, Peter Bendix has no idea what he's doing. Comes from an organization where they run things as, I think, sharply as possible. It's a little frustrating at times with how razor sharp they are and how afraid they are to spend. But at the same time, they are one of the more forward-thinking and smart organizations. And you can attribute that to Neander and not Peter Bendix. Sure. Maybe Peter Bendix isn't equipped to fully manage the president of baseball operations side of things. Maybe he's still learning on the fly in that regard. But the idea that this guy can go from GM of the Rays and playing a key part in what they have built there, climbing his way up from intern, to then president of baseball operations with the Marlins, and have no flipping idea what he's doing. It lacks common sense to me. And I'm not saying from your question, I'm saying that's one of the more common assertions I see. Local media loves to do it. For some reason, this teardown is way different than the other teardowns. I think, if anything, it's the most calculated one I've seen so far. This is the first time I've seen the Marlins invest into player development. They bought 2 Traject pitching machines. Those are $500,000 a pop. And I'm not giving Sherman an applause. I'm not going to give him a standing O for that. But it's the first time players have actual data and technology and information being readily available to them. The Marlins were in the Stone Age compared to other teams developmentally. Derek Jeter's idea of development was making players sprint everywhere during spring training. Just have to run everywhere and the Yankee way, the Walmart Yankee way. And that was a thumbs up. Hiring Yankees castoffs and just trading for athletes and hoping they can hit, but not giving them any of the information or equipment or coaching infrastructure or anything to help them progress as hitters. But now this guy coming from the Rays is somehow worse than that. I don't understand how people have so quickly been what is Peter Bendix doing? And if in last year's team, that team, I don't care who the GM was, the team was not going to be good. So that's the one thing I don't totally understand there. Look, is Peter Bendix going to be a slam dunk phenomenal executive? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe he's in over his head to a degree. Maybe he's a better complementary role guy. Chaim Bloom, for example, brilliant baseball mind, does a lot of things well. I think he did a lot of things poorly in Boston, quite quite poorly with some of the free agent signings and things like that. But you cannot say that Chaim Bloom is not a smart baseball mind and is not good with player development. Look at the farm system that he left there. Look at and I know that's what the Cardinals want him to do over there now. To say that he's just completely inept and doesn't know who he's trading for and doesn't know what he's doing there, like even the way that they've churned and burned the 40-man roster with some of these bullpen arms and things like that is stuff that the Marlins were never doing before. We'll see how it all progresses, but he definitely has an idea of what he's doing. And I think to assert anything else, which has become very popular, is just low-hanging fruit. But Johnny, thank you so much for the support and thank you for the donation. I really do appreciate it, man. As a Rangers fan, should I love Skylar May the way I do? I love you too. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I always love going back and forth with you as well. I mean, I'm trying to dig up my write-up that I have on him in my notes because you're going deep here. Give me a few seconds to pull up my notes, and then I will get back to you on that one. I promise I have it circled, but I want to make sure I answer it properly with my notes here. I am so disorganized on the desktop. Got to get more organized on there. I will get back to it, though. I promise. Thank you so much for the support and the donation. Really, means the world that you all are even just hanging out with me here. This is a good one because I think it's really good. I think the farm system's really good at this point. We'll see how the White Sox develop and progress. But Edgar Caro took a huge leap last year in the second half. Another guy who I had a blast doing those mechanical adjustments and diving into that, how it allowed him to tap into more EVs, like more impact there. Also, how it helped him elevate more consistently. The defense looks like it's come along really well. The approach is good. The makeup's good. He's, I think, a top 5 catching prospect, maybe top 4 catching prospect in the game. Then you get another top 5 catching prospect in Kyle Teal. Weird double dip there, but I think the focus was let's maximize the return on the Crochet deal. So remember, Chris Getz is going to be remembered for how he does there, and he's going to potentially be retained for how he does there. It's not going to be for winning a World Series in the next 3 years. It's how he did on the trades that you don't get a do-over on. And with Luis Roberts' value just not where you want it to be, this was his big opportunity. So for those that were wondering, why get another catcher? If he wasn't going to get one of Meyer, obviously not Anthony, not Christian Campbell, I'd rather just get the best prospect possible if it's I'm fighting for my job, and they'll figure it out. But that's a bat that's going to play. So you add him, that's another top 50 prospect for us at Just Baseball. Noah Schultz is arguably one of the best pitching prospects in baseball and the best left-handed pitching prospects in baseball. Hagen Smith is right behind him, and it was my top arm in the draft. I had him ahead of Chase Burns. So that helps. And then, just the overall depth that they've been able to kind of put together here all of a sudden as well. I think it's a top 5 system in baseball, or at least right on the outside of it. It's funny because when we're doing these live, I don't want to say anything that I'm not 100% sure of, and then it gets clipped. It's like Aram says this team's a top 5 system in baseball. Like Colson Montgomery taking a little bit of a step backwards last year was frustrating, but he's still incredibly valuable. I think Brian Ramos showed some really good things. I think Grant Taylor, though it was iffy in the Arizona Fall League, looks like he can be an absolute dog. George Wolkow, do a lot of swing and miss, but man, he looks like he could be a potential steal, hits the living crap out of the ball. I love the Bonnemer pick. Mason Adams is a high floor arm. I'd say it's just outside of the top 5. I'd probably say it's in the 7-8 range, but it's a really darn good farm system. It would be, I think Luis Castillo or Sonny Gray would make the most sense for the Giants, given the state of their farm system. I think they could pull off a trade for Sandy, but I think it would require a 3-team deal, right? You imagine they're not going to trade Bryce Eldridge. I think in a 3-team deal where you can send Kyle Harrison somewhere else, and then a couple quality prospects go to the Marlins, and then the Giants also send Luis Matos and some other young pieces, then maybe they could make it work. But that's the tough part. Teams are not always going to be jumping out of their chairs to facilitate a trade for an ace when they're not getting the ace. But if you're getting Kyle Harrison with 3 years of control or 4 years of control, that's the way I could see it kind of happening. but it would require probably a 3-team deal for the Giants to be able to pull it off for Sandy and potentially Castillo. Sonny Gray, they could absolutely make it happen. And Pablo Lopez, I think they could make it happen as well. But I think they should. And it's hard with the state of the farm, but I think they absolutely should, because that would really, I think they've been kind of trying to get that impact guy, missing out on Corbin Burns. Now, I think kind of forces you to pivot. And I think Sandy is the most obvious move. You could then extend him immediately, and him pitching in that ballpark, he would be unbelievable. But you'd have to get really creative to piece that trade together, right? And I think it would have to be that 3-team deal where Kyle Harrison's going to another place, and then you're kind of building from there to try to get enough of a prospect return for the Marlins to justify it. Because if the Marlins are moving Sandy, which they're going to, it's just a matter of when. But when that happens, they've got it. You talk about optics and your job. Like, Bendix has to nail that deal when it happens. This is exactly what I was saying, though. Like, this is why you got to win now if you're the Orioles. Gino Martinez does seem like a Ray's arm. I agree with you, Alex. Let me see what else we got. What's up? Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Ben. Congrats on being a Royals fan too, because a lot of fun days ahead. I'm excited. I think there's a lot to be excited about there. I'm sorry, I was confused for so I assume. Oh, sorry. Let me get back to that one. Skylar Hales, you're talking about. So I was confused for a second. I'm like digging through my notes in the Rangers org, and I'm like, why do I not have a Skylar May? Why do I not have a Skylar? Why do I not remember him? Because my lane party trick is I'm going to remember. I think I'm going to remember just about any prospect with some intrigue and be able to tell you something about it. It's probably the lamest party trick in the world. I get to see him in the fall league, actually, and stuff was loud. He didn't have a great outing when I saw him, but the stuff was loud. And I think this is a guy that could be fast tracked to the bullpen. I think I saw him get up to 99, 100 when I was out there. And the fastball plays up because he's big and athletic, but he works down on the mound. And I think it gets on hitters quickly, really pop the glove. And I think this is a guy that absolutely you should be excited about. And when I was kind of going through the names to watch and just some of the underrated arms in this, Skylar Hales is another example of why I think Chris Young is doing such a phenomenal job with this organization. Same with Cole Drake. Like, they are identifying and developing arms really, really well. I think you have every reason to be really excited about Skylar Hales. And I mean, you look at what he did last year in Double-A in the Texas League, a 2.10 ERA. The peripherals were great. Like, this guy's got something going on here. And I think that he could be fast tracked to the big leagues, to be honest. Let me get back to the Royals question. I did do stuff for Locked On Marlins. That was the OG gig. That was the OG gig. There we go. Most highly ranked prospect to impact the team this year. Recently updated the Royals top prospect list too. You can go check that out on justbaseball.com. If you go to justbaseball.com, by the way, and go to top prospects by team, you can see the updated lists and when they were updated, and we're going to continue to be crushing those through the offseason. So just something to keep up with there. This is an interesting one because I think a lot of their top guys are 2 years out. If I were going to bet on someone who would make the impact this year, I think it's Noah Cameron. But I'm also kind of a high guy on Noah Cameron. We had him ranked 6th for us. And I mean, the guy can pitch, like, just flat out. I think Noah Cameron can pitch. He made several impressive leaps last year. His fastball went from like below average to fine, which is all he needs because he's got a plus changeup. He added a cutter. He tweaked his curveball, and he gained a tick on the fastball as well, a tick and a half. He went from 91 to 92 and a half while eliminating 6 inches of horizontal movement, which allowed him to work better vertically and tunnel better off with the changeup, tighten up the curveball, added a cutter, And his numbers were ridiculous because the command is good. I think there's a guy that could be a really solid back end of the rotation starter. And we saw the end zone whiff rate jump and saw him fill up the strike zone. I could say Cags, and I think it's possible. I just want to see the guy chase less than 30% of the time. We finally saw him stop chasing as much in the final 12 games of the Arizona Fall League, and he put up a 900 OPS the rest of the way. If he can cut down the ridiculous chase, definitely a guy I could see up there. Another reason, though, if you want to fast track him, put an end to the two-way thing. We don't need it. What do you want a potential lefty reliever for? Like, this guy can hit 50 home runs if he's healthy and if he's not chasing at an egregious clip. So that's what I would love to see. Floor and ceiling is tough with a guy like him because the injury concern and the swing and miss concern. He hedged some of the swing and miss concern, but the approach isn't great. The defense is good, and that helps the floor. The power has ticked up, and the bat speed program helped him there. He had a 90th percentile, I think, of like 106, 90th percentile exit velocity of 106. Ceiling is, 25 to 30 home runs and above average defense at shortstop from the left side, and that's, a guy that's going to make all-star games. The floor is a frustrating hitter who's going to run into 20 home runs, who you probably don't want facing lefties and plays good defense at shortstop. Like, I think that's what it could look like. But I think, ceiling, you're looking at like a 270 hitter, 30 home runs, and good defense at short that could progress to even better than that. The floor is tough because of the injuries and the swing and miss, and maybe the defense levels out a little bit where you have like a slightly above average defender, 250 hitter, runs into 20 home runs, still accumulates a few WAR, and like just by nature of being productive at shortstop. I genuinely think the Padres, man. Like, and I'm not just saying that because you host Locked On Padres, which if you're a Padres fan, go check that out. Like, the Padres have payroll constraints. Roki Sasaki is the player for anybody with payroll constraints because he can't make more than the international bonus pool allocation that you have. Sasaki is a guy that I think wants to feel very important and wants to be a key piece for any team. And when you look at the Padres, like, they got Dylan Cease, they got Yu Darvish, right? And they've got Michael King, but man, they desperately need another arm. And, Roki could be better than all those guys. He has a chance to be the reason why the Padres can compete with the Dodgers. What's cooler than that? Like, that I think is the coolest thing in the world, right? The evil empire. It used to be the Yankees. The Dodgers are the evil empire. Versus the Padres, who kind of just have their hands tied a little bit now, and for understandable reasons. They've been a team that actually went for it. Their owner passes away, unfortunately, and he was one of the best owners that we have in sports, and Peter Seidler. And there's uncertainty on how they're going to operate, and they're a little handcuffed by RSN issues, and they actually, teams love to cry poor and now blame the RSN issue as a reason to cry poor. The Padres have a actual valid case here. Like, they've actually spent. This is the perfect situation. I would love nothing more than to watch him. I don't have nothing against the Dodgers too, but I would love nothing more than to watch him go toe to toe with the Dodgers. And with reports that the Dodgers already had the deal in the bag and this and that, and this is already a big rivalry, it would only add to it. I think there's nothing more fun than him being a San Diego Padre. Thank you, Showtime. Sorry after saying that. I'm sorry. I love a lot of our Dodgers listeners, and I love most of the Dodgers fans I meet. But we baseball, every sport needs that team that everybody wants to knock off. And I love a rivalry. And what the Padres and Dodgers have done for baseball, I think, is phenomenal. It's what baseball keeps trying to force the Yankees and Red Sox to be at this stage. It's not that anymore. Hopefully it will be maybe this coming year with the Red Sox actually trying to win. But thank you so much, Showtime. Ooh, that's a tough one. Who does Noah Schultz comp to most closely? You got a lot of 6'7", actually like more like 6'9" lefties off the dome. Randy Johnson. I hate to do that. It's not that he's way better command than Randy Johnson had at that point, but also probably not as stuffy yet, which is crazy to say because the slider's one of the best in the minor leagues. The fastball's not the ride fastball. It's a little bit more the heaviness to it. He's kind of in his own realm, and I know you said most closely. So I'm trying to think of like left-handed pitchers that really look anything like him. And it's quite tough. Like, I think you could look at, man, I don't know. Cause like, I like, let me just forget the pitch, like forget the physical profile. Let's just talk about like the arsenal from the left side. It's a little Framber-ish, right? Where fastball is going to get him ground balls. He's going to get a lot of swing and miss with the breaking ball. It's a slider versus Framber's curveball. But some similarity there, throw strikes. It's really tough, though, to find a comparable pitcher to him because he's so damn unique. And for him to throw strikes to the degree that he does for a left-handed prepster from a cold weather area who is 6'9", like that is what makes him so rare to me. Like, how does that guy not have command issues? So that's the closest just because of the ability to get ground balls and then the breaking ball, even though it's a different breaking ball, but it's really tough. He's kind of in his own area. He's incredibly unique. Oh, thank you so much. I don't know if I want to I don't know. That sounds like a stressful life after the Alex Reyes debacle. Seemed a little scary. But thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. I think with the hitting development, a lot of it just sometimes comes to having the right people there, man, because I do believe like there are there's markers, like requirements to be able to hit a Major League Baseball, right? Or just hit the ball professionally. Like there's just certain things that you're going to have to be able to do. But after that, hitting isn't like cookie cut. It's not something that you could just say, everyone swing like this or like everyone follow this template. You have to look at the way a hitter moves and what his strengths are, what his weaknesses are, and then how to make adjustments to accommodate that. Even from the setup, right? Like if I'm a guy that has a tendency to fly open, there's certain things that I can do with my setup that may help hedge that. If I'm a guy that is struggling to stay back, and just keep drifting forward, what are some things that I can do to maybe keep my weight back? I need a cue. I need a move. I need something. For example, a lot of guys, it's because they just need somewhere else for their body to go. So that's why you'll see some hitters start with the bat kind of like over their shoulder, leaning back, so that their thought is just, let me get the bat over and coil into my backside. If I'm doing that, then I'm not drifting forward. Like you need, I think, just the right people. It's just that simple. Then with the scouting side of things, it's also, identifying the talented hitters and things like that. But they did that. Like Colson Montgomery is a very talented hitter. But when I look at him mechanically, I just don't think that there's been anybody helpful in his ear. Edgar Caro found it, but I almost wonder if he found that on his own. And he's always been a guy that kind of operates that way. That's the big thing. So I think it's just getting the right people in place. And I wish I had more to it. But the biggest thing is I think it starts from the top, right? Like you need continuity from top to bottom. You have a hitting philosophy that you instill. And again, I know it's not cookie cut, but you have a philosophy of the way that you want to approach ABs. It's not just mechanics, right? It's the way you approach ABs. It's the things that you want to do as a hitter and the things that you want to make sure you don't do. And then that comes from the top to the bottom. And the best organizations have continuity from top to bottom. What is being preached at the major league level is being preached at the low A level. If you don't have the people in place that are either qualified or just even there. So you need the staff to do it. It's going to get lost in translation at some point. And with these organizations like the White Sox and the Marlins, and they may not have even had the right guy at the top, but even once they did, if they did, then it was getting lost in translation through the levels towards the bottom. Look at the Brewers. What is said at the big league level is echoed all the way down to low A. Dodgers, same thing. And I think that makes a massive difference because it also helps you get acclimated to the next levels. So you're not getting something brand new thrown in your face as you're trying to adjust to a new level. You're doing the same thing. It's just against tougher pitching. And it's just even more important then to lock in on that. But thank you again so much for the support and the donation. And thank you for the kind words. Jeff Passan's actually been fortunate enough to exchange some like just text with him, and like the guy has forgotten more about how to be a reporter and just how to go about your business than I think a lot of people know in this industry, and he's the gold standard. So a great guy as well. Going through some more questions. Yeah, like that sounds like the floor. I think that's a great example. And then again, remember floor. Like you don't want that to happen, but you know what? If that's the floor, like we get there. Let's see what else we got. Tigers went to Bregman, Kim, and Santander. I think Bregman, in as much as I want to see them spend money, why would you sign Bregman in that stadium? A guy that talk about spray charts and it being like swinging in a place where like guy benefited from the Crawford boxes for sure. He is similar. He's an elevated version of Hye-Seong Paredes, right? Like I don't want to undersell him. Like he hits the ball harder and he's just a better athlete and more talented. But elite bat to ball, elite approach, and manipulates the barrel well to be able to hit the ball in the air to the pull side and take advantage of the Crawford boxes. There's not much to take advantage of in Comerica. Maybe he can adjust and spray it and take advantage of the space. That could be what he takes advantage of. But the power would take a hit at that point. So it would be more bat to ball, which Scott Harris loves, though. So that's why I could see the fit. But it's a challenge. Santander is another kind of yellow flag guy for me for that team because Santander doesn't walk. That guy hit 44 home runs. Amazing. It required him hitting 44 home runs to have an OPS over 800, What happens if he hits 35 home runs? His OPS is what, 790, which is good. Is it 80 million good? How many home runs is he hitting in Comerica? Maybe he still hits 40. I don't know. I mean, it was a nightmare hitting from the right side and in Baltimore last year, but you hit from the left side 2 times for every time you hit from the right side. That's another one where I think it would be a little risky. In terms of financials and just what makes the most sense, I think it's Hye-Seong Kim. So I think like Bregman, you're not going to get burned. Like he's going to walk, he's going to spray the ball, he's going to play good defense. Kim, though, like he's going to play elite defense. He's going to give you at least league average offense. He's going to steal some bags, things like that. I think I would rather sign Kim and then allocate all of those savings to extending Tarek Skubal. But that's just me. If all things were equal and you can't play that game, I guess Bregman is a higher impact player. But that kind of feels forced. I would just sign Kim in terms of bang for your buck. I would just go with Kim, to be honest. Yep. He's the real deal. He is the real deal. I'm a big fan of his. I think he's going to, I think he's got a shot at rookie of the year, man. Like runways there. He hits the living crap out of the ball. He has a great feel for the barrel. The approach got better. The defense has gotten better at third. He can run. I think he could go 2020 as a rookie. And yeah, I mean, there might be some adjustment period. Like the approach has gotten better, but I could see him getting a little expansive. But with how hard he hits the ball, he was one of my favorite guys out of the draft. The Cubs have done it back-to-back years. Got two of my favorite guys out of the draft, Shaw and then Cam Smith. I think it tells you how confident and bullish they are on Matt Shaw with the way that they were just not only willing to trade Hye-Seong Paredes, who they had just traded for, then trading his contingency plan in Cam Smith. That's how much Shaw's defense had come along at third base as well. So I definitely like where he's going. Great point as well. Treat your minor leaguers like major leaguers. Probably help them become major leaguers as well. No doubt about it. Woo, that's a great question. I am partial to Zaire Hope's potential and just what we've seen. So if I had to take one, I'm taking Zaire Hope, but Cam Smith is a safer prospect without a doubt. But I think Zaire Hope's tools and what he could potentially be might give him a slight edge, but man, that's like A-B. Like they're right there. Love that you asked this. I think Lombard's going to have a big year. When we do our breakout prospects every year, this is going to be one of my breakout guys. He is too talented to put up the numbers that he put up again. Young, challenging environment, playing shortstop, good defender though. Like I thought there was a lot of things that he did well. The numbers overall didn't look fantastic. He's going to be good. I think as he grows into a little bit more power, I think we're going to see him put together a really good season. I think he's going to have a nice year, and the Yankees need it. That system kind of stinks. all things considered, that system kind of stinks. I mean, if you're the Angels, you're probably hoping for a Lavalette, right? Because you're going to want him in Anaheim tomorrow. But I think Lavalette in general, in a class that might be worse than last year's, it's too early. Like a lot could change, but I'm going to take the college bat with monster power. And this guy, and I was going through the video the other day, some freakazoid swings, like left on left damage. Like there's a lot to like there. I think Lavallette's just the best bat in the class and comfortably. Thank you again, Ryan. Thank you so much, man. You're the best. 3 guys you expect to take a leap in terms of rankings and prospect intrigue. So on the breakout side of things, again, I think George Lombard is easily one of them. I think Angel Henao might be one of the most underrated prospects in Major League Baseball with the Guardians. Looks like a good defender at shortstop with a freaking rocket for an arm. Switch hitter who they love those switch hitting, scrappy middle infield types in Cleveland, right? We know that. Yet Henao is different because usually it's a scrappy slap hitting type. Henao hits the ball hard, man. And still has room to hit the ball harder. Even production from both sides of the plate. I think they love to comp every middle infielder ever. That is a switch hitter, which is all the Guardians go after. Oh, he gets comps to Francisco Lindor. Please stop comparing every middle infielder. There has never been a major leaguer with more prospects compared to him than Francisco Lindor, and nobody looks like Francisco Lindor. But in terms of like what he can do at the plate and then just having the arm and the talent at shortstop, like I think he's the closest one of all the like comps that just keep getting thrown out. Like it's ridiculous. But Henao, like he can hit for I think potentially at least average power. The approach is really good. He's going to play a good shortstop. I really like what he's got going on there. To me, I think he's one of the most underrated prospects in baseball, point blank. And then another one in terms of rankings and prospect intrigue. Let me make sure I answer this properly. He's going to be out for a portion of the season, so I think that'll almost help in terms of like the dichotomy here, like of where he was and then where he'll be. Johnny Farmelo was in the midst of a monster breakout. I guess not breakout, as a first round pick, but he was in the midst of, I think, really solidifying himself as one of the game's more exciting young outfield prospects. Then he tore his ACL, Mariners prospect in center field. The biggest concern with him was the hit tool, right? Because he's plus runner and left-handed hitter. And in pro ball, I saw a swing that was way more refined than what we saw as an amateur, and an approach that was above average already. And he's elevating the ball consistently. And he's flying all over the yard, and he looks comfortable in center field. And he's going to be back probably around June. I think with his ability to hit the ball in the air, average EVs that I think are going to tick closer to above average. I think they actually were slightly above average. And the approach, the speed in center field, assuming he's fine off the ACL, I think he could quickly become one of the more exciting young prospects in baseball as well. This is my other major pet peeve. Please stop comparing every tall left-handed hitting shortstop to Kyle Seager. That is another good one. I've not seen a prospect yet that actually reminds me of Kyle Seager yet. It's so like, it's like when we watch the NBA draft and every guy, like every white left-hander would be like Manu Ginobili comp, right? Like I think it's just kind of lazy. Francis Pena is fun. Stuff is nasty. I think there's plenty of prospect intrigue there. Braden Nett, I think there's some stuff to like, but I think Pena could have the biggest impact in terms of just swing and miss and jumping right into the bullpen situation there. Chandler Simpson. So I told you I grew up on the Marlins, right? And the old Marlins. He's Juan Pierre. He reminds me of Juan Pierre, man. And I think there's a need for these types of players back in the game. Like, we've gotten so far one way that I think the speed, slap it around and play great defense in center field profile is kind of needed again. And Simpson, man, he bunts as well as anybody. He's going to steal a lot of hits that way. The contact rates are outrageous. Like, outrageous. His out-of-zone contact rate was like 88%. That's higher than 92% of hitters in zone contact rate. So he's never going to K. He's actually got a good approach. Great defender in center field. He can steal 70 plus bags. Maybe he'll steal 100. Who knows? I think it's that Juan Pierre profile. And he's fun. What an awesome conversation with him too on the call up. He's a funny dude. Such an easy guy to root for. And man, he is a great young player. I'm excited to see what he's going to do. I think he's going to get up with the Rays sooner rather than later. Don't have a ton on Hyun-Suk Jang, but from what I've seen, I think I've put out a tweet with some of the video, like of him just humming fastballs in there. I've learned the hard way about getting too excited about some of these complex kids that, throw way too hard for their body at their age. But yeah, he could be a freak show. He has some special things going on there. I think there's a lot to like there. I barely remember, but like I just don't have a ton of like in-game recollection of Chuck Carr, but I know he's another one from like that, like scrappy speedster, fun player. And like, I think Chandler Simpson is cut from that cloth as well. I like Braylon Morrell. I think the swing path-wise looks good. The thing with Morrell was, and again, I always talk about it, like he's 6'2", 180 pounds, still kind of coming into his body. He is still kind of learning how to use the ground with his swing, right? Like where I think sometimes it gets a little armsy. It looks great. The path is good, which is generally a little bit harder to teach. I think he's just got to get comfortable in terms of using his lower half more consistently and getting into that backside. He has a tendency to kind of step in the bucket a little bit, which will cause him to fly open. So like just once he starts using the ground more, like the path, as you mentioned, like the swing is good. He's been able to drive the ball to all fields, but to drive it with more authority, he's going to need to get that lower half more consistently involved. But in terms of guys in the Ranger system that I think could make a huge leap next year, I have him actually flagged as is one of the breakout guys in that farm system. Man, your guess is as good as mine, brother. I think rushing you got to hold on to unless you're getting a superstar. Paredes, I still think fits in as the lefty masher. Dude, he destroys left-handed pitching. He still did that even at the big league level, but through the minor leagues, video game numbers against left-handed pitching. You have Conforto. He can easily spell the short side of the platoon there. So I still like him in that fourth outfield, short side of the platoon role. Outman, he's probably a trade chip, but how if he hasn't swung it well? You know, like he's got to rebuild his value, but he's not going to get the big league reps to rebuild his value. I think with Tommy Edman now and the fact that Paredes looks like he can actually play a pretty decent center field, I think he's the most expendable. And Outman would probably be a guy that you like throw into a deal for a player. It's just tough with the situation with rushing, given that like, you know, they had him playing left full time at the end of the year to try to find room for him. And then now there's no room for him in the outfield. So is it backup catcher? But then you got Hunter Fiducia, like who also can move all. I am kind of confused in what they're going to do, but I think you got to trade Outman at this point. Like he put up numbers in AAA last year, didn't get enough of an opportunity to get going again in the big leagues. This guy put up a 4-win season. Teams will take a shot on him. Yeah, I absolutely think he can. Well, first of all, he can go get it out there, man. That catch he made in the Super Regional, given the circumstances, I think was one of the best catches I've seen in a long time. The field of hits good. The EVs are low, but he's skinny. Like if he can tap into more power, I think it's a guy that could easily be a top 5 pick. But the floor being so high because of the field of hit and the speed and the ability in the outfield, I do think he is a good center fielder who can hit enough. But the ceiling though could be really high if he makes enough, you know, or if he can tap into a little bit more power. Yeah, it was the Gators game. Dude, it takes a lot, you know, to make me jump out of my chair when I have no emotional attachments either. I almost fell out of my damn chair with that catch. He's a gamer. That's a guy that I would have circled on my draft board. I can tell you that much. And I'm excited to see if he can tap into a little bit more juice this year. But even if he doesn't, center fielder who can hit enough, as you said. Great question. I don't think you trade Luis Garcia. Luis Garcia looks awesome. But I think you do need to consider what to do with CJ Abrams there. I think you got to give him one more year just based on the way that the roster situation works out, right? Like, but there's a real world where, you know, let's say Brady House doesn't hit enough, right? And then you could slide Abrams to third base potentially. That could be an option. I think you got to give Abrams one more year to just try to develop as a shortstop, get a little bit more mature in multiple ways, and see how that goes. But Garcia is so solid there. I don't think you can move him. That's a guy that you want. I would love to move Abrams to the outfield, but the outfield's kind of crowded, right? Like if Jacob Young is not going to be a regular out there in center field, then I want Cruz out there. He's a plus defender. Maybe you move Abrams to left or right and James Wood to the other corner. I think that could make a lot of sense, but it's an interesting situation there that I think I would give him one more year to just try to get to be passable. Not because I think he's going to magically have things click. I think there's a chance, but more because there's a chance he could click, things could click. And then also you have the possibility of just having more clarity on your roster situation to then react accordingly and go from there. This is one that I seem to be the lowest on Christian Campbell of anybody in the world, which is wild because I still think he's a top 50-ish prospect, but consensus everywhere else is top 10. I think the swing mechanics are just too wonky to work at the big league level. And the swing decision, he's very patient, but in zone swing rate is really low. So it's just like, he's just borderline passive, hits the living crap out of the ball and has freakish bat speed and has done some things that I think have really helped him be incredibly productive. But like I look at the swing and the mechanics, and I think he could get blown up by big league pitching, and I think he's going to have to make some swing adjustments. So yeah, he could hit 30 home runs and I think do a lot of good things, but doesn't really have a true position yet. Like I don't see him as the top 10 prospect that everybody else does. And I hope I'm wrong, because it'd be electric. It's a cool story too. 5th round pick out of Georgia Tech. I've queued up all of the fastballs running in on the inner half, and he got blown up a lot. It's just the difference is he does not miss a mistake. I think he could be a really good mistake hitter, draws walks, but I don't see a consensus top 10 prospect there. Elijah Green a little bit more than Vaquero, as crazy as that sounds, but like Elijah Green's contact rates were like 50%. It's like a coin flip whether he's going to make contact. His power and speed is enough for me to never fully give up, but like at least he has that going for him. Vaquero, like I don't really know what there is to like there. I mean, I'll never forget the first time I saw him on the backfield, not long after he signed, and I was like, okay, he's just young. He's young. It'll look different. It hasn't looked different. I just don't know if he really excels at anything in particular. I think you can still hold out hope for Green as just like a guy that, if it's Chris Carter, but he can play a good center field, it's a bizarre profile, but that would be a major leaguer, right? And an interesting one. So I think you got to hold out some hope there. And I don't think it's impossible, but it's tough. Ooh, that's a good question. I'm going to think about that one. I was very sure would be elite, but never panned out. Let me think about that one. Because, okay, well, injuries got in the way of this one, and I'm not fully giving up on him. He showed some good things. Brennan Davis, though, injuries really tore him apart. Signed with the Yankees, though. So we'll see. Signed with the Yankees, minor league deal with a spring training invite. That was broken by JustBaseball.com, by the way. JustBaseball.com had that report. But Brennan Davis was a big one for me. Torque just seemed can't miss, right? Like I always had Riley Green over Torque. I'm looking at the 2021 top 100 that we put out. But it was only marginally, right? That's more because I loved Riley Green. Torque just seemed like can't miss. I think he's absolutely in that conversation. Honestly, I think I got a little too excited too quickly on Robert Hassel. And again, Hassel's not cooked yet either. But what Hassel was doing at 19 years old, the feel to hit, the speed, and then you had the physical projection, right? 6'3", you could see room for strength. I'm like, oh man, this guy's going to be dynamic as hell. And it just hasn't come together for him. But if you go further back, Jeremy Hermida is a great one. I was there when he hit the walk-off, or when he hit the grand slam in his first AB. And I'm like, this guy's going to be incredible. He was not. Cameron Maben was one. He had a nice career, but Cameron Maben was a guy I thought would be a lot better than he was. Just didn't happen. Did not happen. I'll try to think of a couple more, but those are definitely some good ones there. I was never high on Diego Cartaya. That's one I don't like victory lapping on guys getting DFA'd. Like that's just super lame. But I never really got it. Like he was a guy that hit well in a good environment, and then the EVs were never great. The contact rates were never great. The approach, like the defense like was ahead of his years, but then stalled out. I never really understood it. And the body backed up. I'm Emil Morales. I think Emil Morales is a bit of like a scout the stat line situation where like put up ridiculous numbers at the complex, but the underlying stuff in the swing, I don't love it. I think Yoendry Vargas has more going for him. I think Vargas is interesting. And I think he's got more bat speed. I think he's got a better swing. I don't I don't see it with Emil Morales. I know the numbers are crazy, but I can find you a lot of guys who put up crazy numbers at the complex. I don't see it with Emil Morales. We'll see what happens, but I just don't see it. White Sox farm price seven or eight. But I think with Grant Taylor potentially taking a leap, if Bonnemer looks like how he can look, easily could be in the top 5. I agree. Like Madrigal seemed like he was can't miss. I do sneaky think injuries for him too. Espino was one of the best arms I'd laid my eyes on, and I'm not Jim Callis. I haven't been doing this as long to be able to say that, but holy crap. Fastball velocity, shape, the change, the breaking ball. It was like you created a pitcher in a lab. It makes me so sad to see what happened to him. That's one that gets me as disappointed as any. Look, Friedman's probably forgotten more about baseball than I know, but that was one where I was like, you got to trade him. You got to trade him. You can go back on the call-up episodes, and I never really got it. Never really got it. This is a tough one because you don't want to add a player that's expecting to play the whole year, right? Because you want to have the runway for Brady House. But I love that the Nationals are making it clear that they want to compete, right? Like they want to play ball this year, and they should. Like it's a young core that's coming together, and they can actually make some moves. And I think they're 2 years away from actually being a contender. And I think this year could be a team that hovers around high 70s wins and plays some meaningful games in the second half. And I think by 2026, they could be a sneaky wild card team. Like they should start focusing on competing, but you don't want to block somebody as good as Brady House, but Brady House struggled in AAA. So I think you need that kind of stopgap type of guy. So it's an interesting spot there. I would take a shot on like a reclamation project, to be honest. And if it doesn't work, then you call up Brady House, like a Yohan Moncada. I know it's not the most exciting thing in the world, but like that type of player. And if it works, great. You can flip them. You can figure some things out. Doesn't work, who cares? And just DFA him when Brady House is ready. I think Josue DePaula is on a different level. Different level. Ball data points towards it. Swing mechanics point towards it. Approach points towards it. I think Cartaya got a lot more leeway because he was a catcher with a good, just a good ability to call games, make up kind of advance. So he got more leeway, and people overlooked a lot of yellow flags throughout the batted ball profile and even the way that he moved behind the dish. DePaula, it's already plus raw. He starts hitting in the air, plus plate discipline, good feel to hit. The only concern I have about DePaula is the defense, but shit, man, that bat's going to play. No, not totally, but I would like to see a little bit of a mechanical adjustment, and it just seems like he hasn't made that yet. He showed some good things in the fall league, but he needs to make a mechanical adjustment there. He's very, very two-legged with the swing. I think can kind of just get armsy as well, drift onto the front side, and gets rushed and long to the ball, which was not what he did before. Max Clark comp. I think I always thought the power was upsold with Clark, and then I think that the field of hit was kind of undersold, and the approach was undersold. Like this is a high floor, good, dynamic center fielder who will hit the ball hard, but I think we saw some plus power grades. I think he's more 15 homers, but if you're doing that with plus defense in center field, plus wheels, and above average a plus hit tool with good plate discipline, like that plays. But in terms of the comp, it's a good question. I'm trying to think of center fielders that kind of fit that bill. That is tough. Center field is in a weird spot in the sport right now, man. It is in a weird spot. I don't think there's a comp exactly like him right now. I'm trying to think if there's someone like a few years back that fits that mold a little bit. Like it's interesting. But I think he's going to hit for average. He's going to walk. He's going to steal some bags. His arm is fantastic in center field, and he can close in on a lot of ground out there. So it's. I'll have to think more about like who that exact archetype profile kind of reminds me of, but we haven't really had a ton of center fielders that look like that in a while, which is again indicative of the position. It's really hard to find guys out there. It's a tough position to find consistent talent. There's no doubt about it. I'm gonna do a few more questions before I go get some dinner. Pretty hungry. Bader with a better hit tool is not bad. Merrill was one I thought of, but Merrill just has so much more projection to him. I would say like last year's Merrill could be like what you could dream on. But at the end of the day, like it's probably a little lofty. I freaking love Jackson Merrill. But I think what Merrill did last year, right? 24 homers would be probably the top end, would be what you could kind of dream on. See, the problem with Granderson, too much game power. I don't think he's going to like Max Clark swings pretty flat, which is fine. Helps him make a lot of contact, but I think it's more doubles and hard doubles, spray the ball all over and run. And then he'll, pull aside, surprise you with 10 to 15. I think Josue DePaula, man, because of the field to hit. Lazar Montes is good, really good, but underlying whiffs there. DePaula at least gives you some value with the legs. Sneaky stole some bags last year. I think DePaula is just a better hitter, and the power is not that big of a gap. And DePaula actually had a higher 90th percentile exit velocity. I think I'm trying to, if I close my eyes, sometimes I remember. I'm pretty sure 90th percentile of Lazaro Montes was about 104 and change this year, which was down from the year before. But he made more contact, hit the ball in the air more consistently, so you'll take that. I think he cut his ground ball rate by like 10%. But Josue DePaula was closer to 106. Put the ball on the ground a little bit more, but the contact rates were a lot better. A lot better. Give me the over. Give me the over. This guy hits the living piss out of the ball. And I know people talk about, but the ground ball rate or whatever. Go look at Juan Soto's ground ball rate. And I know he's not them, but like some of the best power hitters in the game have high ground ball rates, but they get their A+ swing off so often that when they hit it in the air, it's gone. Their home run to fly ball rate's 25%, right? Or something crazy like that. So it doesn't matter. I think I'll take the over. I'll take the over, which is crazy for a rookie, but I'll take the over. I would say, like, with what the price of relievers now and what Helsley did, I think you can get a fringe top 100 guy for him and then a filler, or 2 top 10 guys and, a top 20 guy. I don't think that would surprise me. It is 1 year. But with how good he is and how expensive it is on the market, I could definitely see that. Arenado. I don't know. It feels like nobody wants him, which is crazy. Like, I understand that he does not hit the ball that hard anymore. He still was an above average hitter, and he's still an elite defender at third base. He's still Nolan Arenado, and he's not that expensive. I don't know why more teams are not interested in him. But looking at fits, I still think the Yankees should consider it. I think the offense could play up a little bit more. He pulls the ball in the air fine. I don't hate the Royals as a fit at all. I don't know if they do it, but I don't hate them as a fit. And then it starts to get a little iffy from there. I think the Angels would not surprise me, to be honest. If I had to bet on one, I'd probably say the Angels. It's an Angels move. The cost of acquiring Arenado would be so much cheaper, and then you would owe him not that much money. But if it was just one or the other, I'm obviously taking Bregman. But if I could get Arenado and then sign Hye-Seong Kim, like I'd probably rather do that. But I don't know. Bottom 5, probably 25, 26 range. It's not very good, unfortunately. They got some good upside though. Like I like the Tibbs pick. I like some of the things that they did, but I don't know. It's a lot of volatility, and unfortunately, like some of their top guys have kind of trended in the wrong direction or graduated. This would be extremely funny, and I would love it. And they're already paying him, so why not just? They're already paying him a good chunk. It's one of the worst trades in the history of the world. So, yeah, quick one on this. Sorry if you've already heard this one before, but I had always wanted to start something like this. I was so tired of hearing people say baseball is dying when I just don't feel like that's the case. I think, you look at NBA viewership, it's down 40%. Why aren't people saying NBA is dying? People instead are just saying, what's wrong with the NBA right now? And so that always bothered me. And I always felt like it was because of the big divide between the old guard of baseball media and what fans actually wanted. And that dichotomy, I think, left a really interesting gap for just baseball. And that's just always something I wanted to do. But I just never knew how it would make sense or when or how, whatever. And I went to broadcast journalism school once I decided not to play ball, tore my labrum, was committed to play Division III ball at Amherst. And once I tore my labrum, I'm like, oh, what's the point? It was like, I'd rather try to work in sports. So go to Syracuse. I'm like, I'm going to go the play-by-play route. I want to, be at the field every day. So that's what I did, and studied broadcast journalism, broadcasted in NECBL, and then broadcasted in the Cape Cod League, and so on and so forth. And took a job broadcasting in the minor leagues when I graduated. And I'd been hosting Locked On Prospects and Locked On Marlins, and I loved that side of it. I'd been writing and really fell into the prospect analysis, that side of things that I loved. But I was always like, okay, well, I'm going to go the play-by-play route, and graduated into COVID. So minor league job, gone, season canceled. So I just leaned into the podcast side of things heavily, was writing a bunch, and I was like, okay, it kind of gave me a pause to think about things. And that's where connected with, obviously didn't connect. I always talk to Peter, but reconnected with Peter, and Peter, was on the same wavelength, very much wanted to do the same thing. And he also was like, we got to do video. Like, the video is the future. Like, we need to do more of that. It was right around the time TikTok was taking off. And then, of course, Jack, I had a bunch of classes with Jack McMullen. He was in my broadcast journalism program. So that's a guy that, you heard his voice and how good he is on the mic. Like, I'm like, okay, we need to get that guy involved. Had a bunch of other friends. I was like, hey, would you be interested in writing? We were originally just starting up a website and then a YouTube channel. And then we had the idea of starting the podcast, especially once Jack was on board. And then we started clipping the podcast and putting it out on social. And Peter started running the TikTok and had a feel for that. That was amazing. And then our writing staff started to build out, and people were really excited about it. And all of a sudden the TikTok started to explode. And it just became this thing that was growing really quickly and we're really excited about. And by the time the world kind of got back to normal, we were like, hey, we should give this thing a shot and see what happens. So we went, all in. I gave up Locked On Prospects and actually had to start over with the call up and start from scratch again. Fortunately, so many awesome listeners followed me there, but it was a little bit of a slow burn to start it back up and everything. Again, I was afraid to do that. That was a lot. And then just really leaned into the website, the social media. Peter's a wizard with that. And just our goal was like, be everything that we felt like was missing in the space. And then I think an opportunity that really ended up saving us, is backwards as it sounds, not saving us, but really giving us this springboard, was the lockout. Baseball coverage was like non-existent. What are you going to talk about? But that was where Peter, Jack, and I got together and we're like, this is where we can get creative, right? There's people that are dying without baseball right now. Let's just come up with shit to talk about. We did the Playing GM series. We did all these different fun ideas, and we put out episodes every day. There were days where we're like, what the hell do we talk about? And we figured it out. And I think we built a level of trust of just like, hey, if these guys can, put out content consistently during the lockout, I'm going to hang out with them during the season. And we're so lucky that people felt that way. And the rest was kind of history. And then we just kept building out a staff of incredible people that I've made just baseball what it is. And I couldn't be more proud of the people that we have around us. So it's just been really surreal on that front. But yeah, Peter was my buddy from my fraternity that we shared a love for baseball. And once we were talking, I was like, hey, like this, like, why don't we do something like this? And we got that together, and his ideas balanced out my ideas. And there, once we got Jack on board, the rest was history. I think what Talking Baseball and John Boy has done is I don't think we are able to do what we've done if they didn't, kind of break that glass ceiling in the modern spin of sports coverage, baseball coverage specifically. But I think there's different approaches to it. And for us, like, I do still take a lot of pride in the old journo side of me, like the old journalist side of me from Syracuse. Like, I do still take a lot of pride in the traditional journalism side. Thing is, it doesn't make a lot of money, right? That's why all of these websites are behind a paywall. And the reality is, just peeling back the curtain, vast majority of the revenue comes from podcast, social media. The website is really a means, I think, for us to be able to still be able to be that professional. And not to say that you're not, if you're not doing it, but like, we have award votes, which is the coolest freaking thing in the world. Like, we had a Cy Young vote this year with one of our writers. We had, I believe, an MVP vote and a Rookie of the Year vote. Like, that is where I want to balance the two things, where, I think there is a need and a space for going heavy on the YouTube and that front. And we do that obviously with the Just Baseball show and everything. But I also take a lot of pride in, the traditional journalism side of things, being in the press box for games and being in the clubhouse for interviews when we can do that. And, getting those credentials and that access and things like that, and being at the ballpark and having a staff of writers that are BBWAA members. And, like Kevin Henry's a rock star and was doing live. Yeah. We had a correspondent doing live check-ins from the Just Baseball show from the winter meetings that was at all the press conferences and talking to GMs and everything like that. So my dream was always to marry the classic journalism with the modern spin on it. And I think that's what makes it a little bit different. But I do have a dream of continuing to build it into, a podcast network and a larger sprawling thing as well. And we are really already at the entire company thing, which is really cool, and having a staff of awesome people that really make this what it is. And you amazing listeners who hang out with us and make it what it is. Yeah, but you know how it is. All the Amherst folks end up being front office people. That's how it works. So that's my dream. We'll have to see. Thank you very much. And that was the other thing. I think the other area was, and props to Peter, because Yankees fans usually don't see the big picture. I was like, dude, for us to earn a lot of trust out of the gate, we need to cover the teams that feel underappreciated. And so, we talked about all 30 teams all the time. And I think that was the biggest thing, is like, the national media never talks about us. Reds fans, I know we would always say that, and so many different fan bases. And we're like, well, we want to talk about everybody. Right? How could you be an MLB podcast and only talk about certain teams? So I think that helped us a lot too. It required a lot more research, but shit, that was our job. It's what we wanted to do. If I got to sit down and study everything that there is to know about the Reds this offseason, what they're going to do and their financial situations and what the GMs have said or whatever, what difference is that from doing research for any other job? This is the dream. So I think that was the difference. Thank you. That is the ultimate dream, is to work in a front office in some capacity. That is the ultimate dream. It doesn't necessarily, everyone I think wants to be a GM. It sounds sexy in theory, right? I want to be the guy that makes trades and do all these different things and be the guy behind the steering wheel. But for me, it doesn't necessarily have to be GM. I have this love for player development, as you can tell, obviously with the call up and everything. And like, if I could be in a player development role, I would, or scouting role. I wouldn't want to be like the roving scout side of things, but like, in that side of things, like I would absolutely love to help players maximize their potential, whether it be through the information you provide them, video, whatever it is. Like being on that side of things would be a blast for me. And that's always been a dream of mine. No rush. Obviously, I love what I'm doing here. And then I want to do this for a long time with my friends. I'm living the dream thanks to you guys. But that is something that, I would, and I get to do it with some of the friends and my friends in professional baseball right now, where I just get to pick their brains, and sometimes they'll pick mine, and it's an honor that they even do that, and it allows me to learn by just bouncing ideas back and forth off of each other. And if I can ever help guys with a report and put that together, or compare some video for them on their swing before and after, like nothing gets me going more than that. Few more before I go to dinner, because I'm already making my poor girlfriend wait too long to eat. But again, thank you so much. It's hard to leave when I got all you folks in here. It's so much fun. His swing's unique, man. And I think the problem with his swing and where he starts and where he gets and how he moves is a lot of things have to be in rhythm for him to meet the ball where he needs to meet it. And when he gets out of rhythm, it gets really ugly. When he's in rhythm, it looks great. I don't know, because I think he needs to clean that up and find a way to be more consistently where he needs to be, right? When your hands get here, by the time he gets stretched into his slot and foot down, I watched the video on it. Like the pitcher would be at a different point every single time he was in a slot. So your timing was varying too much. So if it's a little cleaner, I believe in his ability to hit, but I don't know if he can hit with those mechanics. So if he looks different, I'm in. I think he can absolutely hit, but I do think the stock will be slightly up regardless. I think it'll be slightly up. I'll go false. I like Kyle Teal a lot. I don't think the defense is good enough. I think the bat's good. I think the defense could be passable, but I don't think it's good enough to be a top 3 catcher in Major League Baseball, unfortunately. I think he'd be a really solid catcher, but I don't think the defense is quite good enough. This dude's going to be a monster, man. Another piece I got to plug. Anytime I plug any of these pieces, if you just search like Aram Layton, James Wood, you'll probably find the article. Another guy who made tangible swing adjustments going into this year and started elevating the ball more, started hitting the ball a little bit harder, started making better swing decisions, and the rest was history. History. Ridiculous stuff. I think he's going to have a huge, huge, huge year. So the funny thing about this, man, is it's not my vote, right? Like, I'm proud to have writers who, like Patrick Lyons has a vote. One of our awesome writers also hosts Rocky's show for us. Kevin Henry has a vote. That's their vote. There's no like company policy or whatever. Like I have the goal of having that, ability, hopefully. And I'm going to apply to be a BBWAA member, and then you got to wait a while and then you get a vote. But that's, I don't say a word, right? Like that is their vote. We're just lucky enough to have them publishing their work on our site. And, that's their right. They've earned the right to vote whatever they want to. Hypothetically, for me, what I would do, I would throw it out. I don't care. Because unless they tested positive that year, I don't care. You got to remember, you can't get away with shit anymore. Like, and if you do, you won't eventually. If you already got caught, the amount that you will be drug tested, I'm willing to just say he didn't do it this year. Right? Like Fernando Tatis, for example. If Fernando Tatis wins the MVP or is the best player in Major League Baseball or in the National League, I would vote for him to win the MVP. If that dude, after getting caught, who now will be tested a ton, and having a huge year will get tested more, gets away with it, I'll just tip my cap, man. I'm going to bet that he isn't getting away with it again and that he's just having an unbelievable year because he's a superb talent. And there's never going to be a player that is potential MVP vote getter that you say, oh, well, he's not even talented enough to do it. He must be on the juice again. Even guys that are on the juice are talented enough to win an MVP. So I would throw it out. I would throw it out. It wouldn't matter to me. Hall of Fame, different story, right? That could be different. That's a whole other can of worms. But yeah. 2 more. I think Bubic is a dog, man. If he's healthy, I think he could. I mean, just because of his talent and how hard he throws, I think theoretically he could be better in the bullpen. But I think he'd be more valuable as a starter because I think he's going to be good. He's going to be very good. I think he's going to be quite a good starter. I don't think so, man. I just think getting popped the way he did. I mean, his resume is ridiculous, but I don't know if I see it. I'm going to go false. I think 20 to 25, I think is a nice year. But who knows? Like getting out of San Fran, man, like all of a sudden it might be like, oh, well, yeah, he has that power. He did look better down the stretch. I will still say I'm going to go 22. He's my number. Last question here. Again, thank you all so much. I do think Tink Hence gets up this season. As much as they like to baby him, started to stretch him out a little bit more this past year. Great numbers in AA. He's a heck of a player. A heck of a pitcher. They're going to trade Fetty. They're going to trade Sonny Gray. Quinn Matthews will get up there. They'll probably trade Steven Matz. It'll be Tink Hence time at some point this year, especially because he's already going to need to be added to the 40. So that's a guy that I expect to see up. And what a year he had. He really, I think, did a lot of things to help himself and his stock, which was already high. Thank you all so much for hanging out. I can't thank you enough. It is so cool to be able to answer your questions and just chop it up with you all. Logan, thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. And I could say the same about you all. Thank you for asking so much amazing questions, liking baseball enough to sit and listen to me talk for 2 hours. I can't tell you how much it means to have you guys sitting here and chopping it up and asking such awesome questions and just having fun with me. So, if you just found us, like and subscribe on YouTube. Keep up with the Call Up, the Just Baseball show, all that good stuff. JustBaseball.com. We're continuing to turn out some awesome stuff there as well. Amazing articles that are going to get you primed up and ready to go for the season. I'm going to continue to try to do more of these live streams. Follow us on social so you know when we're doing them. But I can't thank you all enough. You all are the best. Have a great weekend. Hope you had an awesome New Year and holiday and everything. And wishing you all an awesome 2025. But obviously, we'll be spending plenty of time together throughout the year. Thank you again. We'll talk soon.